The Big Questions is a BBC Sunday morning television programme presented by Nicky Campbell, who co-presents the BBC Radio 5 breakfast show. Now, you have heard me talk on this programme about Nicky Campbell before. The Big Questions is a panel show. It doesn't look like it, but it is. Filmed with a participating audience. So the guests are usually scattered around the front row, the experts, and then the audience weighs in with opinions during the 45, 50-minute long format. It's not great, I don't think. I'm not being childish. It's not great. The questions often have a religious aspect to them, hence it's on a Sunday. And there's not enough time at all really dedicated to each individual subject. Now, yesterday they debated, and I say debated in the loosest possible terms, climate change. Now, Piers Corbyn of weatheraction.org, who's a meteorologist and critic of the idea that CO2 is driving climate change. Piers was on, as was Jonathan Bartley from the Green Party. So far, so good, right? You would think the BBC has invited both sides. That's their job. All is fair and all is above board. Well, not quite. Have a listen to this. I've chopped it up, one or two pieces of this particular programme yesterday. Have a listen to some of the big questions yesterday, featuring the Green Party, Friends of the Earth, and Piers Corbyn from weatheraction.org, who is a climate change sceptic. This is how some of that went.
Has the time come to take climate change seriously? Because many people say we haven't been, and we are facing a disaster of biblical proportions unless we do something about it. Worldwide, hottest February since records began. Has the message got through? How do we get the message through? Liz Hutchins from Friends of the Earth. It must be so frustrating for you knowing how bad things are and how there are still people resisting this message for whatever reasons. Cheer us up. How bad are things?
Well, I think that the NASA data really is alarming, and we should be alarmed, and that comes on the back of all sorts of observable changes to the planet. We can see the Amazon rainforest is getting drier. You mentioned the Arctic ice. We're seeing permafrost in the tundra in the northern parts of the planet is melting, which is releasing methane, which is a kind of a super climate changing gas.
But what does that mean for us? What can we do?
And so the planet is changing, and it's having an impact on people around the world. So people are being, their livelihoods are being destroyed by extreme weather events, tornadoes, droughts, flooding, and so on. Extinctions, yes. Even in this country, we've seen a big increase in flooding incidents, and people who are flooded out of their homes, and they lose their jobs and aren't able to go back, for years. Right.
Liz Hutchins there from Friends of the Earth. So from the word go, Nicky Campbell, the moderator, said it is happening and it is going to be catastrophic, right? He then asked her, how bad is it? Now, she's not a scientist, but he introduced her by telling her that he agrees with her and asks her what should we do about it. He doesn't ask her for scientific proof. Extinctions, she says, extreme weather and all of that, no challenge from Nicky Campbell. That's pretty poor conduct by any moderator. I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes' time. So what happens next is he introduces Piers Corbyn, meteorologist and climate change sceptic, right? Wrong. He doesn't bring in Piers Corbyn. He then brings in Green Party candidate or spokesperson Jonathan Bartley to reinforce the message that climate change is real and it's dangerous to think otherwise. Strange way of having a debate.
We have to work in concert. We morally have to do it. It's for our own interests in the future, for our children, for our grandchildren. Things are bad, Jonathan, aren't they?
Things are very bad. And the frustrating thing is actually to transition our economy, create green jobs, to move into renewable energies in a big way, to become a world leader in renewable energies. No, you've got to decide what you're going to...
Fossil fuels?
You've got to decide what you're going to invest in, financially, morally, ethically. Where are you going to put your energies? And we had a burgeoning renewable energy industry that was really taking off, and the government just pulled the rug from underneath it.
Right. OK, again, Campbell introduces Bartley by saying we have a moral obligation to act and no challenge whatever to anything that Bartley says. He eventually gets around to introducing Piers Corbyn. He should have introduced Piers after the woman from Friends of the Earth, but he didn't. But anyway, Corbyn is the only scientist on the panel, but he mocks him straight off the mark by comparing him to Trump, as in Donald Trump, and Ted Cruz. This is Nicky Campbell, BBC presenter, allegedly impartial and objective, trying to get to the bottom of whether climate change is being taken seriously enough or not. Eventually he gets to Piers.
A hand goes up of possible dissent. I mean, you're a climate change sceptic. So you're with Donald Trump, right? And, and Ted Cruz. Let me finish. You'll have your say.
Donald Trump could be with me, so what is the problem?
And Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio.
We speak what is true.
They're with the vast majority of scientists and the Pope.
No, that isn't true either. The actual figures about the actual percentage of scientists that believe man is having a decisive influence is 7% tops. And if you go on our website, weatheraction.com, you can see the links to peer-reviewed papers that show that. And the BBC and others constantly put out propaganda making people believe.
Nonsense.
No, do not shout rubbish. Let's just look at the actual facts. Everything that is happening in the world now has happened before. Climate change is natural. There is no evidence that CO2 is driving climate change.
At this rapidity?
There's no evidence that CO2 drives climate change. What the million years of data shows is that world temperatures control CO2 levels. And what we have now is a lot of extreme events happening due to a very wild jet stream, which we predicted from solar activity years ago. And if you want to do anything about climate change, the natural climate change, what we should be doing is having more defence against extreme events. But we should not be wasting money reducing the amounts of CO2 because CO2 is driving nothing.
I mean, that's just
CO2 is good for plants, and the more CO2, the better. Now, I suggest you look at the actual scientific evidence, go on a website and many other websites, and stop listening to oil companies who back the climate change theory in order to justify increases in oil price. That is a fact. Go on their own website.
There are voices like Piers Corbyn, aren't there?
And we can predict the weather, and they cannot.
You're coming up against a tidal wall sometimes. It must feel like it. A wave of dissent.
I think what's really important in these debates is that there's a balance that reflects the real scientific evidence. There are voices like Piers, and he's a very small minority.
No, you go on, look on our website, read the facts. Read the facts. Facts is what counts in science, not opinions from me or anybody. It's the facts.
Now, Campbell initially didn't stop the interruption of Piers Corbyn by Liz Hutchins from Friends of the Earth and Jonathan Bartley. He allowed it. She and Bartley have had a pretty good say by this stage, remember. The entire programme is available on the BBC iPlayer. They've had a good long say. Now, no matter who you are moderating, you're bound to be fair. It is incumbent upon you to make sure that each side of the debate has their say, irrespective of what your own opinion happens to be. You heard Campbell there say to Liz Hutchins, do you see what you're up against? That's disgraceful. He's supposed to be impartial. Corbyn is talking scientific facts, or at least scientific facts as Corbyn sees them. And it's incumbent upon Campbell to put those points of view to Hutchins and to Bartley and insist that they take each point on its merits. But it gets worse than that. This is a BBC programme now, remember.
There's 7%, he said, 7% of scientists. I read it was 98%.
That is untrue. That is untrue.
Liz.
That is untrue. And also irrelevant.
I tell you what.
The truth is, evidence is what counts.
Let's check out the evidence with Jonathan and Liz.
Okay, so the Intercontinental Panel on Climate Change, which is the world scientists coming together.
No, it's not. They are government appointees. They're government appointees. They are not scientists.
You are not helping the cause by giving a platform to such ridiculous views, frankly.
Listen.
Seriously.
Listen.
It is rubbish.
It's good. It's
I
good.
think we've got to be very clear about this, Nicky, because this is nonsense. It comes up time and time again. And in the interest of balance, the BBC says we have to get on.
Challenge you.
It's challenge you.
Piers, I want to hear from Jonathan. I want to hear from Jonathan. Could we please be quiet for a second?
Yes.
Just before we move on with it, when Bartley says that the BBC are being ridiculous in allowing Piers Corbyn come on the programme, I've been presenting programmes and producing them for many years, and I produce some outstanding presenters. The minute that Bartley said what he said about the BBC shouldn't be doing this, Campbell should have torn him to shreds. Absolutely ripped him a new one. What do you mean? Don't dare tell us who we can and who we can't invite onto a programme. We're interested in everybody's opinion. So don't sit there and tell us who we can and who we can't invite on. That's what Campbell should have said to him. It's exactly what I would have said to him. I wouldn't have been rude, but I would have put him right back in his box fairly lively with that one. But he doesn't. Have a listen.
The thing is, it's important to address this and to debate against these views and to show the public, because the 56% of the Tory MPs have, according to a poll I saw, have sympathy for this view. The general public, in your terms, if we can say this, do not realise the severity of this situation. Right. And there are views like this, and it's up to you and incumbent upon you, and very important that people like you, Jonathan, and people like you, Liz, come up and discuss it, and we hear the other side, and you put the other side, you slam dunk them.
You slam dunked them, said Campbell. And that's as bad as it got there. Piers is right about the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, by the way. They are not scientists, they are government appointees. Neither is Jonathan Bartley a scientist or Liz Hutchins of Friends of the Earth. Look, this is the way it is. It doesn't get any more obvious to anybody listening to a programme like that just how institutionally biased the BBC are towards anybody who questions the establishment narrative on anything. Nicky Campbell's behaviour yesterday was disgraceful. I grew up at WLR-FM in Waterford, an award-winning radio station, 3 times Irish Radio Station of the Year, trained to do it properly. No matter what your opinion is. Now, anybody who listens to this radio programme knows that I am sympathetic to the opinions of Piers Corbyn. If I was to moderate a debate between Piers Corbyn and Jonathan Bartley or Liz Hutchins or anybody else, you would never know, if you hadn't heard me before, what my opinion is. Such is the level of professionalism that I would try to apply to a debate like that. They would have equal time. They would question one another. They would get time to offer responses. They would not be interrupted. And at no point in the debate would I offer my opinion. Now, today, we contacted Jonathan Bartley from the Green Party. We invited him on. And he didn't want to come on. And he basically tweeted to me. I've not got the tweets in front of me because so many tweets have come in the last few minutes. It's gone off the screen there. But he basically said that the debate has been had and won. It's now time for solutions, basically. Now, this is after I said, look, I guarantee it's going to be a lengthy but a fair debate. I'll be impartial. Both sides will get equal time. He didn't want to know. I've since tweeted the Green Party, Friends of the Earth, not had any response whatsoever, again saying, do you really want Piers to come on this programme tomorrow evening, which he will, and not be challenged? Do you want him to have 40 minutes or 45 minutes of time on air and you not get to put your side across? And they've declined to come on. What is interesting, though, is late this evening, just before I came on, Phil Radford followed me on Twitter. Now, Phil Radford is a former CEO of Greenpeace. And I thought, great, that's a good idea, that he followed me. And I thought, great, well, he's obviously following this exchange. So I tweeted, I followed him back. And when you follow somebody back, you then get to message them. And I said, Phil, I hope all is well. Do you want a debate tomorrow, a properly moderated one? No shouting, no silliness. My opinion doesn't matter. I'll be completely impartial. Piers Corbyn is up for it. I then tweeted him again because I'm an idiot, and I said, I'm sorry. Here is the time, by the way, and it would be by Skype audio. We have a big audience. I have my opinion, but I am a professional, and I will ensure absolute fairness. At no time will I express my opinion. And he's declined, Phil Radford, to respond to that message, even though he has seen it. I would expect, if I had behaved like Nicky Campbell behaved on the BBC yesterday, I would expect to be fired. It's as simple as that. And in my time as a radio presenter, I have chaired maybe 100 different debates on Talk Radio Europe, at WLRFM, and I had people debating things, people who I strongly disagreed with, and I kept my opinion out of it. What I was hoping tomorrow to do was to have a real debate for the first time on British radio or television, with both sides of the climate change debate, a lengthy one where both sides got plenty of time to expand upon their theories and explain why it is they believe what they believe. Because what you had yesterday on BBC One on the Sunday, the Big Questions programme, was far from a debate. Far from a debate. A 12-minute slot where Nicky Campbell, the presenter, with a woman from Friends of the Earth and a man from the Green Party, basically set about ridiculing Piers Corbyn. That's what it was. Now you ask yourself why. You know, it was disgusting. And just before doing Sunday View yesterday, I saw this. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I really couldn't believe what I was watching. Sadly, despite being challenged to a public debate by Piers Corbyn, despite saying that the BBC shouldn't be speaking to Piers Corbyn, the Green Party and Friends of the Earth have declined the opportunity for a rational, a fair, an open and a frank exchange of views on climate change. Ask yourself why. What separates the Richie Allen Show from programmes like those presented by Nicky Campbell? Well, you can make your own minds up about the merits or the demerits of Campbell's presentation skills or my presentation skills. That doesn't matter a damn. You know what separates us from them? Time. Time. You can sum up the Richie Allen radio show and other radio shows in the independent media with a single word. Time. We'll give time, and plenty of time, to the people who come on this programme to put their points of view across, and even to those who come on the programme who we disagree with. It's 25 minutes past the hour. And I'm going to say this for the last time, you know, on the whole climate change thing. Climate change is driven by solar activity. It's as simple as that, in my opinion. Sea levels have been rising and changing forever. Way back when we had sea level rises of 1,500 metres. We know this. Scientists have said this because of better equipment and being better able to measure these things. There used to be more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than now. Lots more. It went into the rocks. 2.5 million years ago. 2,500 million years ago, I should say. Way back then we began sequestering CO2. It's a natural gas. It dominates the atmosphere. We actually don't have enough of it in our atmosphere at the moment. This is true. Nobody speaks about that. It isn't a pollutant, it's plant food. We've had 6 ice ages. We're coming out of one. We're coming out of one that began 34 million years ago. We're in a warming cycle. And the ice ages occurred, by the way, remember this, never forget it, when there was much more CO2 in the atmosphere. We get bombarded by solar rays when there is activity on the sun. This is not factored into the climate change models. They won't answer these questions. And it's why they've declined to come on the programme. Because these are the questions that Piers Corbyn would be asking them. Not me. I'd be impartial. We've been accurately measuring temperature, Piers Corbyn told me before, since 1850. We've had several cooling and warming periods since then. Up and down, up and down, up and down. All natural, all relative to solar activity. There were times when grapes were grown in Yorkshire. It was so warm. And that predated the Industrial Revolution. It's lies. It's a monumental lie in my opinion. But I guarantee you, I swear on all that's sacred, if the Green Party or Friends of the Earth had taken us up on our offer, they would never have heard me say that. I'd have kept my opinion out of it. 27 minutes past the hour. Let's have a quick break.